If you've followed the world of longevity science and anti-aging, you've surely come across two compounds over the last 5 years or so that have exploded in popularity. Those are nicotinamide riboside, NR, and nicotinamide mononucleotide. These two precursors increase levels of what's called NAD, nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide. You can think of this as cellular gas that powers virtually every process in the body. Without it, we die within seconds. Now, although NR and NMN are two of the most popular ways to increase levels of this master molecule, they're not the best. I wrote articles on both of them back in 2019, and they were among the first and most popular deep dive explorations of these molecules. But today we'll be discussing something that seems to be superior to both of them. If you want to learn more, check out my articles, which are deep dives into the science. I'll pop those in the show notes for this episode. But increasing NAD plus levels is only one thing that we cover today. We talk about a way of doing that called NAD3. We talk about finding your ideal longevity supplement stack out of hundreds or thousands of ingredients out there, how to target just the ones that are going to be the most effective for you. Our guest shares what she personally uses and why. We discuss sustainable longevity practices. We also discuss the importance of blood sugar management on longevity and performance. And finally, I mentioned in the episode that I take about 3 grams of an amino acid called glycine every day. After I did the conversion from teaspoons into grams after the episode, I realized that I'm actually taking more like 7 grams. Glycine is a cheap and easy to use, dare I say, hack to offset a lot of the issues that come along with muscle meat consumption and at the same time supporting connective tissue and sleep and many other parameters of ideal health. Our guest this week is Maite Brines von Melle. She's a holistic health and nutrition coach, and she works as the innovation executive for a company called Biostack, where she helps them to formulate the latest longevity products on the market as well as creating their educational content. Maite is also the founder of the Super Health Playbook, where she runs group coaching programs called Only 66 Days, which teach women to achieve optimal health by building habits over 66 days in a small group setting with community support, accountability, interactive educational workshops, and live strength classes. If you want to check out the Biostack products, pick up their popular supplement that contains NAD3, go to biostack.com, where you can get your hands on their NAD Regen product. And if you use the code URBAN, URBAN, that will save you 15% on your order. For the articles I've written on longevity, that discount, and any of the other resources we discuss in the episode, you can find those in the show notes at mindbodypeak.com/143. One of the things that I really appreciate about this company and Maite is that in addition to creating some of the most interesting and innovative longevity supplement formulas, they also are very community driven. For example, I joined their WhatsApp group. They also have a Facebook group, and the entire team is in there helping customers, answering questions, and providing value. All right, ladies and gentlemen, sit back, relax, and enjoy this conversation with Maite of Biostack. Maite, welcome to Mind Body Peak Performance.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me, Nick.
It is a pleasure. We've been coordinating this talk for months now, so I'm glad that we're finally able to sit down and do this.
Doing it right now. That's it.
Yes. Well, let's start off today with your unusual non-negotiables you've done for your health, your performance, and your bioharmony.
Wowzers, that's a big one. I mean, I think the biggest one for me the last 3 years has been upping my sleep. So I've managed, I'm a Aura ring wearing person. And I've, over the last 3 years, I managed to up my sleep by nearly an hour, which is which is pretty good. Actually, it's more than an hour. It used to be sort of just around 6 hours, and now I'm sort of close to 8, like 7.5, 7.25. But yeah, so this was like a big one I had to work on, and it does take work. You have to be quite disciplined with it. My non-negotiables as well, daily walks. I need to get out in the morning and do my walks and sort out my thoughts and just get some movement going and get the light on me. I do all the basics, I do the nutrition, I do the movement, the resistance training. I do all of that. So that has to happen. I've been a bit ill over the past week, and not having had the opportunity to work out and push myself is really tough. It's one of the things that I've been really missing the past week. So I've done my first workout this morning, and it was like, that was tough to go back into it. But yeah.
Awesome. Well, today we're going to talk about longevity, and specifically 3 protocols and stacks that I think are important. One of them is very popular and well known, and the other perhaps a bit less so. So let's dive in with your background. How did you get involved with Biostack? I want to say labs, but I know that is
you can say, yeah. We recently just gone under like a bit of a not total name change where we dropped the labs because it seemed a bit of a mouthful. So Biostack Labs. We're well known for our NAD Regen formulation. And I think NAD has definitely become like a big buzzword in the biohacking world over the past, I would say, probably 2 years. And has continued to do so. And our mission is definitely to make it mainstream. Often people say, it's not like that you can compare it to collagen, but 10 years ago, nobody kind of knew about collagen. And now everybody's taking collagen, not even sure like what it actually does, related to skin health maybe. But yeah, we want sort of NAD definitely to be a protocol that most people use to support their aging, healthy aging. And I got involved. So my background is in health coaching, nutrition and movement coaching. So biomechanics, and just generally always trying to, as a consumer, figuring out like what is the right way. And sometimes even falling into a little bit of dogma. And I think there is a lot of dogma in this industry. Whereas, you've got the carnivores, you've got the vegans, you've got like, you got to do this training, you want to do that training. It always goes back to me just kind of finding the balance in things. I met these guys in a masterclass, and we got on just really, really well. And I was, we kept on texting each other because I knew so much about NMN, and I was just generally obsessed about what's the latest supplement, what's out there, and just wanting to know more and finding out the truth, essentially. So we just had this sort of ongoing conversation, and they said, look, why don't you just come and work for us? Because you keep on sort of sending us things and throwing studies at us. And so I started working for them 1.5 years ago, and they're a fantastic company. So their NAD Regen formulation was actually slightly different in the beginning. It had many more ingredients in it, including NMN. And then when they wanted to reformulate, that was at the same time when the FDA decided to ban NMN. So we were lucky enough to get connected to someone called Matt Titlow from Compound Solution, who had come up with this amazing ingredient called NAD3. And we connected with him, and we were lucky enough to get a license for it. And that's when we reformulated the NAD Regen product. And I think it became quite well known because Tony Robbins also has the license to sell NAD3, and he uses it in some of his products.
Let's dig into NMN and NAD and NAD Regen. Give me the science around those, because we haven't talked much about them on the show, and it doesn't need to be super in-depth, but like at a high level, what's going on? Why are these important in the body?
So NAD is something that we already have in the body. So it's not something that we have to externally take. We actually are born with it. It's in every single cell in the body. And it's in foods, it's vitamin B3, basically. They are building B3. That's a building block to create NAD. You can't take NAD. It's impossible. And I still always scratch my head when I see products out on the market. They're like, this is an NAD. This is actually NAD. It's like, it can't be NAD. You cannot take it orally. It's not possible. So IVs have become very popular in injections. But essentially, it's in every single cell in the body, and it's part of the Krebs cycle, the energy cycle in the mitochondria, really, really important. If it wouldn't be there, we wouldn't survive for very long, to be frank. And it's important that we keep that energy production going, because other than wanting youthful energy, it's actually a fuel to a couple of enzymes, the sirtuins and the PARPs, which are really, really helpful and absolutely crucial, actually, to repair your DNA, protect your DNA, maintain your DNA. And especially the PARPs, that are really important for genomic stability, which is like one of the hallmarks of aging. In general, we kind of look at the hallmarks of aging anyway at Biostack. But so it's really important molecule that keeps us alive, yet most people never heard about it. So this is like part of our mission to really get the education out there. The issue is depending a little bit on lifestyle. So again, I'm going to go back to getting the basics right, doing the exercise, like some sensible fasting, nutrition and all of that. And we should keep good NAD levels. But no matter what we do, as we age, as with anything in the body, it declines. So what can be done to keep those levels up? Well, one of the main reasons that it actually declines is age-related inflammation, because we've been around for longer, so there's more inflammation in the body. And there's an enzyme actually, because other than taking the building blocks for NAD, via external factors, your body is actually so clever, it can recycle NAD. It breaks it down and builds it up again. And one of the enzymes that's responsible for that is called NMPT. And this is something else that decreases as we age. I mean, like, no matter what we talk about in the system in the body, it's like it all going downhill. So how can we support the body? How can we support this recycling production in the salvage pathway to keep that going, the building and rebuilding of the NAD? So we need to raise those enzymes. But we also want to do it sensibly. So people, I think, when did David Sinclair came out with his study and Tony Robbins came out with his book Life Force about 3 years ago, I think. And it was like everything was about NMN. Everybody was just like chucking NMN down their throat, like 1,000 milligram. I think it was on 1,000 milligram protocol or something like that, but not really talking about the mechanics of NAD production. So there's no point. And if you have a car and you're just like, it's not working any longer, to keep putting fuel into it, there's all the mechanics that you need to consider around, like, why is the car actually not working anymore? In this case, like the enzymes, right? But there's also something that I think now people are starting to realize is that just taking precursors all the time actually might overstretch methylation capacity, which is another process in the body that's degrading as we age. And obviously we all have different methylation going on. Genetically, there is, some people are higher methylators or lower methylators, but as we age, it's going downhill. So we don't want to take methyl donors away from other systems essentially by overstimulating this NAD.
Yeah. And the way I've heard it described is that I think it's the NAD is like the fuel tank on a car, and it gives the body gas, and the sirtuins and the PARPs and a bunch of different enzymes, they're the ones that do the work, and they can only do the work if they have that fuel. Is that right?
Yeah, they need that. It's a fuel. It's a fuel for both the PARPs and the sirtuins, 100%. Yeah. So they can do their work basically.
And then also, like you were saying, back when I read David Sinclair's book Lifespan a while back, I did my own research on NAD plus and NMN, NR, that whole controversy. And I wrote articles on each of them, but I implored everyone to first make sure you're doing the basics, getting your lifestyle in check, because you can continue adding fuel to the gas tank. But if there's a bunch of holes in it, all that fuel's leaking out because your body's recycling pathway, the salvage pathway, isn't working the way it should. You're acting counterproductively. It's not going to take you far, nearly as far as it could if you did a couple little cheap things here and there, and then you add on whatever precursor you want after that.
That's right. Especially sort of hormetic stresses are really important for NAD production. And for example, to raise NMPT enzyme, exercise is fantastic for it. Again, certain amount of fasting, again, sensible fasting. I know fasting is a big topic, but so hormetic stresses are really important. So if you're sitting on the couch all day eating Doritos and drinking alcohol, so alcohol is another one that depletes NAD levels. So having a sedentary lifestyle and non-nutritious food, and also, you can add stress to that as well, as in like chronic stress. all of that depletes. So it's not a very good then grounds to lay the precursors in, because it's not going to do very much. But if you're doing all those things that we talked about, getting the basics right, then it can definitely be very, very helpful to slow down aging or support healthy aging.
Yeah, basically modern living reduces your NAD levels if you just live. And usually it's associated with like huge drops as you age. But even at like a young age, I notice that I feel effects when I increase my NAD levels, however that is. But what's the stat? By age like 70, you've lost what percent of your NAD?
Yeah, they say basically from the day you're born, and when you're 20, you lost half already. And then by the time you're 40, you drop another 50%. So it's pretty drastic, really. We have so many advances, right? I mean, what we can do these days is absolutely incredible medically, like technology, all of it. But there's never been so much stress than ever before. I always talk about like the body being is constantly battling to stay healthy every single day. So from the moment you wake up, maybe the air you breathe or the water you drink or the thoughts that you might have in your head. And some of us are genetically better at it, depending also on detoxification and so forth. So finding out sometimes like what is your genetic blueprint? How can you support your body in the best way possible?
And also during those periods of like higher than usual acute stress, such as sleep deprivation or really intense workouts, taking extra precautions around keeping your NAD high can also help you recover from it faster and offset some of the detrimental effects of whatever that is going on that's causing that stress.
So Ben Greenfield, he's a big fan of our product, and he actually takes he kind of doubles his dose after he drank, but he also does injections. He does all kinds of crazy NAD protocols. But yeah, I know that he goes pretty hard on that. So taking extra NAD, especially if you have been drinking, is a good idea. But so is like taking extra glutathione. I believe so.
I've just seen some research around it helping offset the consequences of sleep deprivation. And so that's an easy one. Like you're traveling, just bring some of that along with you. Or if you have a really late night, that and creatine and a handful of others, they all have some research showing they can help with sleep deprivation. So the goal with these supplement ingredients is to keep your NAD plus levels high. That's like the goal they all have. And then the way you approach that is via different precursors, whether it's nicotinamide riboside, NR, nicotinamide mononucleotide, NMN, or the other more foundational precursors. Can you explain like how NAD3, the one you guys use in your formula, compares? Is it as effective as the other ones?
So they're all different sizes. They're all the same family, but they're all different sizes. The problem is with NAD as such, like I said, we can't take it. It's too unstable. It's not going to make it into the cell. So the biggest one after that is actually NMN. And I think then it's NR, and then it's niacinamide, however you want to call them, but they all are building blocks essentially. So it's not like that one is better than the other. I suppose NMN got popular because it's the next biggest molecule to take other than NAD. So NAD3 is made up of actually 3 ingredients. It's cuprous niacin, there's your building block, theacrine, and wasabi. And the 3 of them work on raising enzymes and also working on inflammation. So the NAD region formulation as such is actually more than just giving a precursor, because it gives you that precursor, tick. It works on inflammation via stimulating autophagy, because we put spermidine in it. So spermidine is another very sort of, I would say the last couple of years, definitely been very, very popular ingredient, because it stimulates our autophagy, the cleansing out of senescent cells, dead senescent cells in the body. Because if there's an accumulation of the senescent cells, again, it heightens up the inflammation process and the inflammation response. And autophagy is another process that as we get older, I keep on saying the same thing, right? But everything just kind of going downhill. So autophagy is one of them. So again, we can, help it with doing some fasting, eating, good sleep, and all that good stuff. But no matter what we do, it's still going down. So taking something like spermidine is really helpful. So we've got the precursor, we dampen down the inflammation, and then we're also making sure, and this is the wonderful thing about the NAD3, because we have got 3 clinical studies on this. And what we've seen is that it actually doesn't take methyl donors away from other processes. So it doesn't overstretch methylation capacity, which I was like super excited to when I found that last study. And it was like, wow, this is fantastic. And when we found it, there's a bunch of other stuff that I didn't expect to come out, like it lowers cholesterol in a good way. So it was like 18%. And we had a couple of actually doctors taking it, and they left reviews for us saying this is the first thing in 10 years that actually moved the needle. So the last thing, which I didn't mention, so we've got the precursor, we've got the building block, we've got inflammation, but it's also providing the enzymes to recycle NAD in your body. So you're kind of ticking all the mechanics around NAD production and recycling. So this is beyond the precursor, beyond the NMN. This is working on the actual mechanics. So it's a really intelligent way of boosting your NAD status.
Yeah, and I like that you guys are thinking through this because, for example, if you don't address the inflammation, but you take NMN or NR on top of that, you can actually exacerbate other issues. There's like a bunch of newer research coming out around that. So it's cool to hear that you guys thought of this in your formula and you designed it. You designed your stack accordingly. One of the precursors that you mentioned in NAD Regen, in the NAD3 is Theacrine. It's interesting because that's like a caffeine analog, and in high doses, it's just stimulating.
Yeah, but without giving you the crash. So this is the wonderful thing about it. It's much cleaner. And we definitely always say, folks, take it in the morning, don't take it in the evening, because first of all, your NAD levels are naturally higher in the morning. You're amplifying that because you fasted overnight, right? So taking these products in the morning, definitely helpful to amplify it, get those NAD levels high. A lot of people also exercise in the morning, which again helps to amplify it even more. I don't think it will keep you awake like coffee will, but I've personally not tried to take it in the evening, but we had some folks saying, oh, I've taken it in the late evening, and I felt like, a bit energetic. It's like, if you want to go out and, want to go clubbing or something like that, might be a good idea. But yeah.
I think that's one of the new frontiers or the future frontiers of supplementation. We've talked a lot about like what it is that you're taking and gone deep on the science of each of the different ingredients. But then very few people talk about when is the best time to take things. Like, for example, vitamin D in the morning is very different than vitamin D in the evening. And the sequencing of it, like what are you doing immediately before it? What are you doing immediately after it? I think that is like going to be a really cool emerging area of research. It's going to help us understand the hugely varying responses to supplements between one person and another. Perhaps it's not the people as much as it is when they're taking it, their protocol behind it.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, Nick, especially what are they doing, especially when it comes of like exercise, like taking antioxidants straight after exercise and so forth. We know a lot more now, to be mindful about that. Just blunting the stress response with antioxidant after exercise is probably not a good idea. So yeah, there's probably a lot more to discover. You're absolutely right.
All right, let's go on to glucose disposal, which is a fancy way of saying keeping your blood sugar steady. Why does this matter?
It's another thing that we're not very good at when we age. So, I mean, it depends like from person to person as well. And it depends definitely on how much muscle is on your body frame, because muscle is very important and it helps to absorb glucose. And exercise, again, helps with glucose disposal. But it's important because essentially it goes down to inflammation. So the more spikes we have, the less receptive the cells are of insulin, the more we're likely to develop things like metabolic diseases, diabetes 2, just to name the one of them. But it's all inflammation, and the more inflammation there is in the body, the more we're prone to then develop other serious health conditions.
Yeah, and you can look at a lot of acquired conditions and diseases as something to do with a problem with metabolism. The energy production isn't as efficient as it should be, either because the body doesn't have the raw materials it needs to carry out metabolic functions, or because the byproducts, the waste, is too high and exceeding the body's ability to buffer it, to carry it out of the body and dispose of it. And so this is beneficial for anyone who's going to be eating like a really sweet, high carb meal, but then it does more than that. I have a feeling, I know from my previous research into glucose disposal agents, they have other uses too. And do you know anything about what else they can help with?
There's always been more natural things around, like maybe taking a bit of bitter melon or cinnamon is well known. Like a lot of folks take cinnamon actually first thing in the morning as well to help with their thermogenesis. And I don't know too much about other products on the market. I know a little bit what the competition up to, but the kind of the star of recent years is definitely berberine. And now the next best sort of best version of berberine is the dihydroberberine because it's much better absorbed. So it's got higher bioavailability, it lasts longer. And some folks have said that some berberine, it can for some accept their GI journey. So that's probably not very good. Whereas we found that with dihydroberberine, it doesn't do that. So dihydroberberine is a plant, right? And it helps with absorption of glucose, with shuttling it into muscle. So this would just be one thing that it does. But we also found that you are better at sort of sensing insulin. It's because you want to become more sensitive to it rather than desensitized, because that happens when we age. I'm sorry to go on about that, because especially for women when they go into menopause, because estrogen also plays a part in blood sugar management, believe it or not. And when estrogen drops, they become actually more insulin resistant. So we want to not be that. We want to be super sensitive to insulin, basically. And dihydroberberine helps with that. In our formulation, which is called glucose disposal agent 8, so GD8, we put like literally the who of who's of blood sugar disposal in there, including something called calorie burn, which is, again, it's a natural ingredient. It's called the grains of paradise. Looks like a peppercorn, and it actually helps. There's this thermogenic effect again, and it helps to burn calories without you. And I just want to say, I know that back in the 80s or early 90s, there were all these like calorie burners and you were like all jittery and losing the plot. It's nothing like this. There's no jitters or anything like that. This is all, again, these are plants, these are herbs. This is a super clean formulation. There's an ingredient in there called InnoSlim, which is made up of astragalus and nonto ginseng. And we found with that, that's an AMPK activator, which is also great. We found, we got Chromax in there, again, great for body composition. Chromax, or Chromium, I should say. Chromax is the patented version. Chromium, well, very well known to help with blood sugar management again. So they all work in the same department, right? But they all have slightly different jobs. So I have to tell you that personally, and I will sort of over the next 3 months get this up, I do like a scan every 3 months of my body composition, and I haven't done anything differently. I mean, you know, I eat my protein, I do the training and all of that. The only difference is I take GD8 when I have carbs. And this is not, we're not just talking about cakes and pizza, as much as I love cakes and pizza, but we're talking healthy carbs, potatoes, rice, sweet potatoes, starchy vegetables, all of that. So, and I've lost body fat on it. So that's 2%, not doing anything, just taking the GD8. And customers have come back to us and said, I don't feel bloated, I don't crash anymore. We're just like, yeah, it's actually some of our team, this is their favorite product because it's just kind of made them like have carbs and not feel bad afterwards.
I'm really curious if you break down, if you know how much of the fat you've lost is visceral fat, like the unhealthy fat around your organs, and how much is subcutaneous, like belly fat. It's not necessarily.
Yeah, I have a feeling because I have very low visceral fat. So I don't think this was actually a visceral fat thing. This was just subcutaneous fat. So yeah, which I'm obviously very happy about. So I know it's not like 2%, but it's 2%, right? So without having to do any other extra protocols other than just taking dihydroberberine, has been called the nature's metformin for good reason, really. So yeah.
Do you know, after a workout, would you want to use this still if you're going to consume a lot of carbohydrates, or would you want to have that slight transient insulin spike to stimulate muscle protein synthesis and some of those like repair processes?
So we have quite a lot of bodybuilders as customers because I don't know if you know of Chris Gethin. He's a big supporter of our brand. And he takes it every day, like after workout, before he takes it a lot. And actually, bodybuilders have been taking glucose disposal agent for years. I don't really, to be honest, I've not paid attention. I take it when I have those carbs, even after a workout, and I've not seen it make a difference. And like I said, I've lost body fat and haven't lost muscle.
Yeah, and I also like that you guys included the grains of paradise in here because I have a big bag of those at the house, and sometimes I'll just sprinkle those on top of my meal instead of like black pepper because it has a similar taste, a little more flavorful than black pepper, but it's an easy one to add on for a little extra boost, and it's pretty cheap. You can get it on Amazon and different stores. Let's talk about some of the other natural glucose disposal agents that are common. You've mentioned cinnamon a couple times. There's like apple cider vinegar. That's a semi-popular one. There's like any form of acid, really. You can get like a lemon or lime that can help a little bit. Like a few minutes of brisk exercise or even walking that can have a huge impact on blood sugar levels. That's like a non-negotiable for me is to walk or move before and after a meal for that very reason.
Yeah, there's definitely, I think the glucose goddess, Jessie, Chelsea has done a fantastic job over the past year or two with her book, The Glucose Revolution, of just really putting it out there that eating your foods in certain orders can have such a dramatic effect on how your body is actually absorbing the glucose. And it's always fibers first before the protein, then the fat, and then the carbs. And you'll see lying this almost like netting like in the tummy really, really helps with before the carbs go in, because then it takes longer for the carbs to be absorbed and turn into glucose. So it's kind of intuitive in a way. Like I grew up in Germany, we always have like little like portions of salad before like the main course, and you have like a little veggie course first. And then you would have your cake at the end, But by the time the cake comes around, you're like already lined up with, the fibers and the proteins and the fats. So you're okay. So, and yeah, having a cake then rather than having it in the middle of the noon when you're starting to get hungry again is probably not a good idea, because that goes straight through, right? That's like super absorption, super spikes. So, but yeah, everything that you mentioned, vinegar can be helpful. Movement, 100% before and after.
Bitters too. Anything really bitter.
Bitters, yeah.
Like, unlike the flavor profile wheel, it counteracts sweetness and it also stimulates the gallbladder and liver, and that can be helpful also.
Yeah. And anything that helps the liver out is always a good idea.
Okay, speaking of, now let's go on to GlyNAC Plus. And I personally use Glycine every night, have for a long time. Big fan of it. It's a great amino acid. But tell me what your GlyNAC Plus is.
Yeah. Can I ask you, how much glycine do you take in the evening?
It depends. Usually around 2-3 grams.
Okay. You just only take it in the evening?
Sometimes I'll take it in the morning or afternoon too, but usually it's just in the evening.
Before workout?
I take taurine before workouts sometimes, but not glycine usually.
Yeah. Okay, I'm just asking because some folks say that, helping, because why it helps with sleep is that it lowers your body temperature, right? And having that help before prior workout might be able to amplify your performance.
You could potentially also stack it with, you could do some glycine first, and then you could take some cold pre-cooling, like a quick cold plunge, and then work out, and that should give you some really good performance gains also.
That's exactly it. Yeah, doing a cold plunge before, rather than, as you said, like, learning not to do it afterwards to blunt the effects if you're trying to grow muscle. It's one of the most researched combos out there. They work synergistically so well. So Glycine and NAC. NAC, both of them are well known for helping to build glutathione, which is a master antioxidant, and again helps to combat oxidative stress. Really important as we age. We know that. The studies around it have been actually quite extraordinary in terms of longevity, and pretty much every company out there, they're offering glycine. Some, though, that's what I was asking about the dosage that you take. I suppose you take like a powder. Do you just put it into?
Yeah, I take a powder. I have a big bulk supplements thing of glycine. I just add some to my evening drink.
Yeah. So what's quite common, I think, a good dose is about 3 milligrams. I think that's a really sort of, that should be like
3 milligrams?
Sorry, 3,000 milligrams.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Sorry, yeah. 3,000 milligrams. Yeah. But then if you look at sort of what's out there, a lot of the times it's actually not as much. It might be 1,200 or maybe 2,000. And we saw, like, when you look at the literature in terms of the studies, it was definitely on the higher end. So we know it builds glutathione. And this is like one of the reasons it did so well in the studies. But beyond the glutathione, we know it helps with collagen production. It helps with like any tissue, muscle. It helps with building neurotransmitters. I mean, the list of what that combo does is just endless. So why put something else there? Well, because we like stacking stuff. It's in the name. So what else can we add that makes sense and addresses the hallmarks of aging? Because it always go back to that. Again, there's a study that came out, I think it was in 2022 as well, on calcium alpha-ketoglutarate, which is quite extraordinary. It was the Rejuvenant study where I believe they took quite a high dose of calcium alpha-ketoglutarate and they saw an uptake in longevity by something like 12%, if not higher. But it was in combination with, for women, I think it was vitamin D, and for men, it was vitamin A. So it was like that combo of the two. And again, it's quite nice that they made it like the difference of, I don't know, for whatever reason, one sex needed vitamin D, the other one vitamin A. But as you know, AKG, which is the simpler form of it, the calcium part, it just makes it more bioavailability. Basically, it's better absorbed by the body. That's why we chose it. But AKG has been around for many years because we know muscle recovery, performance, and then we added a little bit of selenium and molybdenum to help because again, it's the glutathione building. It's very synergistic with helping the liver out. So talking the liver, talking the joints, talking gut health, talking neuroprotective, respiratory, again, NAC, very well known for that. Again, list is kind of endless on the benefits. And the guys were like, we can't put all this stuff on the website. And there's like so many studies. It was just impossible. So we had to just pick some of the main benefits that people will know of or heard of. But the list is really endless. So that's why we had to make this really like take it up a notch, not just GlyNAC, but GlyNAC plus. Yeah.
Yeah. When I was looking into alpha ketoglutarate a while back, I came across a bunch of different forms. I can't recall the different ones off the top of my head. Maybe it was sodium alpha ketoglutarate. I'm not sure. But why did you guys choose and settle on the calcium form ultimately?
When we talked to the guy that sources the best ingredients for us, that appeared to have the best bioavailability.
Okay, yeah. Oh, yeah. The other one I was thinking of was arginine alpha ketoglutarate, AAKG. It seems like the calcium form is better researched to begin with, and it seems like a little more promising from when I was digging into it. But I was curious if there's anything else.
Yeah, I was just trying to see, like, is there anything else that we could have stacked? But other than those two minerals I mentioned, I think this is a pretty solid formulation. And it was also really important to get the right dosage in there. So we've got the 3,000 milligram of the glycine, 1,200 of the NAC, and I think it's 350 or 300 on the calcium alpha-glutarate. Actually, you know what? I don't even have mine yet because we have these because we just literally, you're one of the first people to get it. And we haven't been able to send it over to the UK yet because we've got real shipment issues at the moment. So yeah. So it's nice to actually see the bottle that you're showing it to me. It's like, that's what it looks like. Thank you. And it's much bigger than the other bottles, right?
Yes.
Yeah. You're just showing off now.
Yeah. Well, that's because you have glycine in here, and 3,000 milligrams is a lot of powder to put in any capsule, which is why the serving size is bigger than some of the other products you have, I'm assuming. Would you recommend people, when they're working with using these, they titrate, they start off, say, like half dose, see how they tolerate it, and then go up or down accordingly?
Yeah, I think if somebody is a very lean body, I have one acquaintance. Her body is almost childlike. She's very small. She doesn't weigh very much. And with her, she pretty much has to take everything by half. So for someone like her, definitely. But for most of us, I think we're okay. And it's also some people also know of themselves that they might be a little bit sensitive to some supplements. We get the occasional email where somebody feels a little bit nausea when they take NAD Regen in the first few days. We had a couple of people that actually didn't do well on the GD8, but what other variables are there? You know, what have you been taking the night before, or like what's going on with your life right now?
How do you recommend people decide where to begin? Because having 3 products is a lot less complicated than having 25. But if someone wants to get going, How do they choose which of these to start with?
Yeah, I also have to tell you, Nick, we also have another product. It's called Cell Shield, but we're out of stock. And I've just reformulated it actually. So this is actually glutathione. It's a patented version of glutathione with liposomal vitamin C, and it had chlorella, but we changed it now to a patented version of curcumin. So it's called C3. So it's a super master antioxidant, like three that work so beautifully together. And when I looked at this literature and studies behind it, how they work together, it was like a no-brainer to kind of reformulate it. So what's the best way to start? So I would probably suggest if you're anywhere over 40, it's probably time to think about your NAD status. Do you eat a lot of carbs? Do you work out a lot? I mean, you pick what you kind of, what are your priorities? I mean, somebody did ask me the other day whether they should take GlyNAC or NAD Regen. It was just like, well, they do the very different things, you know? So it's like this will help you with this and this will help you with something else.
So I guess then what can people expect to notice or experience? Like if I had obviously blood sugar labs that were showing coming back with problems, or I was wearing a continuous glucose monitor and I just couldn't get on top of my blood sugar, then the GD-aid would make a lot of sense. It's the natural right step there. But then, for example, with GlyNAC Plus, there's not going to be any lab that comes back that says, okay, this is now the perfect tool, would it?
No. So, and it's the same with NAD because you can only do NAD testing actually in a lab. They have tests out there. When you Google like NAD tests, you can get home test kits, but do not buy them because it does not work. It's impossible. It's so unstable. You can't do it. So how do we know that this stuff is working, right? So you're quite right. With GD-aid, it's quite easy because you can use a glucose monitor and see how you react. And actually, I told you about Chris Geffen, and that's what he does actually in a lot of his reels. He eats his muesli in the morning and he shows like, how he is reacting to it with and without the GD-aid, which is great. But you also know when you crash, don't you? You also know when you have that big bowl of pasta and afterwards you just like want to lie on the sofa and not do anything. A lot of our customers are taking their health very seriously. They do a lot of like blood panels, biomarker testing and so forth. We've seen definitely lowering in cholesterol. On the last studies, actually, something came out, probably not. I'm just going to mention that it might have a really positive effect on your liver. But that's all I will say at the moment. And you will notice an uptick in energy. Yeah, you will feel that uptick in energy, but will you feel your DNA repair going on? You won't feel your DNA repair going on. You should feel well. There should be a general sense of well-being. But normally we don't feel that DNA repair is not going on anymore because we're going to the doctor's office because something's wrong with that. We developed some sort of condition all of a sudden. Then we know that DNA repair was not going on. We're in for the long game. If you're taking your longevity, your health span seriously, then addressing the hallmarks of aging is like anyone after 40, I would say do it. And if you can do it before, if you can think about like building that muscle now, you're better off now rather than when you're 60, but it's not too late when you're 60.
And the whole DNA repair process is very costly in terms of the way it depletes NAD. So if we can avoid putting ourselves in situations that are not necessarily hormetic, but really damage the DNA, whether that's ionizing and non-ionizing radiation in high doses, or it's just like getting a sunburn from excess UV exposure. A bunch of these different things are pretty easily avoidable or at least minimized and can help us keep NAD higher without having to actually add or remove anything, really.
And it's everything. It's like, I always like talking about. So one thing we sometimes miss out on is like just stress. The stress is so depleting of everything. Magnesium, let alone NAD, just like some of the, the fundamental stuff, like, because most people will be taking vitamin D, magnesium, maybe vitamin C. Some people take a multivitamin. Some people know their deficiencies. I know I have a higher need of vitamin D because I've done my genetics. So I know I need it. I also need extra vitamin A because my body is just, it's just what is lacking genetically. So I need all that stuff. And everybody's different. So you got to get those right. But this is the next level. Longevity supplements. We're addressing now the hallmarks of aging. We're addressing inflammation.
Have you found genetic analysis to be that helpful for you?
I suppose I was like one of the very early ones to do 23andMe, and then I got the raw data, and then I just got that deciphered. So there are some things I still don't fully know. I found it helpful to find out there's a higher need of vitamin D, there's a higher need of vitamin A, and I'm not very good at, what was it, charcoal foods. I'm just being mindful of that because I'm not very good at detoxifying it. So knowing all of that, I'll look after it and I'll make sure I supplement accordingly. So for me, I suppose so, because I think by the time you're 40, you kind of know how well you do with detoxification, for example, because you can have two people sitting in a room with mold. One will be like on the floor and the other one will be just fine. And that's also like a genetic blueprint in there. So
Yeah, I think it can be really helpful if you use a reputable and accurate service to understand like your sensitivities, your predispositions, all that in advance. And if you do that at a young age, you can capitalize on the information throughout your entire life. And perhaps it's not deterministic, perhaps just like having this idea in your mind and not being married to the idea that it has to be this exact way. But like that, having that baseline, having that background can just shed a little more light on why you might want to take a slightly higher dose of vitamin D, or you might want to take methylated vitamins instead of the normal forms.
I tell you, last year I got very interested in bioresonance testing. And now I'm lucky to have someone locally who does an extremely amazing job, actually. And she has this, it's called a Quest machine that you literally hold, and it reads the energy frequencies in your body. And it then translates it. I don't know if you've done it, but you get this whole sort of reading on the computer, and it's absolutely insane. So I've sent a lot of my clients, because other than working for Biostack, I also work as a health coach, and I've sent like a bunch of people there, and it just all comes up. It's like the whole history. And this is just you holding onto a little bit of metal, and the computer is able to read the frequencies around your organs, around your DNA, and tells you whether you had a tick bite. It tells you whether you're deficient in something. It tells you all of that without you having to give a bit of hair or saliva or blood, anything like that. It just blows my mind.
Yeah, I've been hearing more and more about bioresonance machines in the last year or two. I have not played around with any yet, but it sounds like it'd be really cool, possibly fruitful. How do you go about like refining your own personal longevity stack and protocol? Like what's been your methodology there?
The less, the better, 100%. And this is where the bioresonance testing, and in combination with kinesiology, has been absolutely, again, just mind blowing, because I took my stack and I had things that, I've obviously had my Biostack stack with me, but I had like, my magnesium. At the time I was taking magnesium threonate, believing it is the most expensive form of magnesium for sure, but the literature on it is like very high bioavailability. So, I had like a bunch of very fancy supplements, and a lot of them, apparently, they just did really badly with me on muscle testing. So we need to change some things up, and some things were just like really not necessary. So that's how I really streamlined my stack last year. And it just feels so much better now that I'm taking this really incredible magnesium now, which is an ionic magnesium. It's a liquid, because I put half a dropper in water. It's super salty. But yeah, I just immediately within actually 2 weeks after changing slightly my supplements, my HRV went consistently up by 10 ms, which for me, it was just like big deal, because nothing really shifted it overnight. It was always seemed to be kind of in the same numbers. And then all of a sudden it was just like 10 ms. 10 ms is like, what's going on? So yeah, that was really interesting. And now I know. And the great thing is, and I have to tell you, I was a little bit worried when she took the Biostack's products on me and she tested it. It was like, oh, please let them work. And they worked fine. But I gave the practitioner now some of our products, and she's testing them on many of her clients just by holding and seeing how they're responding to it. So this is kind of muscle testing where you hold down and they push down the arm. You've probably done it. And she said really, really high success rate. More than 80% of the people actually responding really, really well to it, because she has, I don't know, thousands of different supplements in her praxis. It's really high end. I streamlined it to the basic stuff that I know my body needs. which includes, obviously, I take the Biostack stuff, I take my vitamin D, I take the magnesium, I take humic and fulvic acid, which I came across, again, last year through the bioresonance testing. So I find that my body really loves it. I just drink it and it's just, I just feel so good on it. And I have to take a little bit of iodine because my thyroid was a little bit sluggish. So I take occasionally, like if I have a stressful day, I take some ashwagandha, or occasionally I take some GABA or something like that. But the main stack is kind of pretty tight, to be honest. Oh, PC, Body Bio PC I take.
Phosphatidylcholine?
Yeah.
And what do you take that one for?
My cellular membrane health, because other than doing bioresonance testing, I also do biomarker testing, right? And I do it about myself and all my clients. And cellular membrane health is one of the things that was flagged with everyone, including myself.
What kind of tests are those?
So this is a British company called Omnos. I suppose it's similar to it's Inside Tracker in the States, isn't it? They do pretty comprehensive. So this tests 58 different biomarkers now. And it combines them and makes it really easy to read on the dashboard. And it came out as poor cellular membrane health. So building those membranes up again. I'm pretty careful in terms of cooking with seed oils and stuff. And it's pretty tough to avoid because it's in everything. So again, just staying home and cooking at home. I don't do it all the time. Of course, I'll go out and I don't always ask like what's in it, because needless to say, it won't be olive oil. It will be something different. But I am mindful of it for sure. But it's something I'm working on. So so that's why I'm taking the PC.
And if you do go out, you can have a little bit of extra vitamin E or spirulina, I think it is, or glycine even, to help offset some of the damage of the peroxidation of lipids, of the bad fats, to like give you a little bit of a shield. It's not going to make up entirely, but at least it'll help mop some of the damage caused by those.
Oh, you mean like any binders?
I don't know if it's any binders specifically. It's like specific ones that work with seed oils. The problem with vitamin E too is that then you have to like start looking into whether your product is derived from like it's composed of tocotrienols or tocopherols or tocotrienols.
I know.
And the tocotrienols, I think, are the ones that you want the highest concentration of. I think those are the better ones. And the tocopherols are the ones that are lower quality and cheaper and used in most supplements. Are there any longevity supplements or molecules or even pathways that you think are going to be huge in the future that you are currently researching?
Yeah. So I've been looking at Akkermansia a lot. Have you had Joel Green on? Do you know of Joel Green?
Yeah, we've been coordinating for like 3 months trying to find a time. We had to reschedule twice so far. But yeah, I actually do his 2-day core protocol.
Yeah. So after reading his book, I thought this is really interesting. And then I came across.
And by the way, for anyone listening in, Akkermansia is a very special form of probiotic.
Yeah. And I thought, like, after reading book, I was just like, okay, so this is how we can help with production. But obviously, Pendulum, really well-known company, quality sort of product. I've not taken it myself, but the sort of research behind it and the people behind it is quite extraordinary. They use the AFU, the activated, their live, which has always been very difficult to manufacture and also to keep stable. But I've been looking at a paper that also kind of promotes TFU. So some of them are alive and others aren't, but there's more of them. There's billions of them. So I think potentially when it comes to blood sugar management, when it comes to neurotransmitters, when it comes to GLP-1, all of those things, I think Akkermansia is very, very interesting. I would like to have my own levels tested on Akkermansia. So I've not done that. I don't know if you've done it. And something I need to figure out a bit better is EMF protection. I've got one of the Lila quantum pendants that help to neutralize EMFs, but I'm looking for a really good home device. So if you have any, suggestions on that, so not so much an ingredient or supplement, but I think EMF protection again.
There are a handful of ingredients that can help. Like one really common and popular one that you're already taking is magnesium. That's a natural calcium channel blocker, among other things. And then molecular hydrogen is one that I'm a big fan of for its ability to help protect against non-native EMFs. And you were saying during the day, but I think during the nighttime is the most important to protect ourselves because that's when all the body's repair and regeneration processes and protocols are occurring. So if we can only choose one time, those give or take 8 hours, that's when you want to be as walled off from EMFs as possible. Reduce the drags, the friction, because every time your body has to repair each of the single strand or even double strand DNA breaks from like that radiation exposure, single strand from non-native EMFs, but you're still using a lot of PARP for that, and you're consuming a lot of NAD. And if you don't do that, then you're going to have more resources for more important stuff. Well, Maite, we're going to start to wind down. We've been going for a while. If people want to connect with you to check out Biostack or Biostack Labs, how do they go about that?
Yeah, they simply go to biostack.com, right? So it's just Biostack. We're also on social media under Biostack Labs. I am under Super Health Playbook. That's kind of my website and my Instagram handle. But yeah, reach out to us on Biostack Labs. Nick, we're going to set you up with a discount code as well so your audience can try the products for themselves, because we talked about them now for quite a bit. So maybe they're interested. So we'll definitely get a code for you out.
Absolutely. And I'll put a link to the code and the social media and the website and everything in the show notes for this episode below. Maite, I have a couple more questions for you today.
Yeah, go.
If there was a worldwide burning of the books and all knowledge on earth is lost, but you get to save the works of 3 teachers, who would you choose and why?
I think anything related to Buddhism and the teachings, because you can't combine it. You can't write, this is what the Buddha wrote, but Buddhist teachings, definitely, because I think again and again, people come up with new names, like, how to manifest and what was the secret. And it all goes down to Buddhism, or Paulo Coelho's books, everything goes down to Buddhism. So I think that would be a major save. I really like the works of Stacey Sims because that's about women's health. I have to put it that way. And another health book that I really love is Atomic Habits by James Clear.
What's one thing you've changed your mind on in the last couple of years?
I think I've just become very careful with dogma. Like I mentioned that in the beginning, it's so easy to, especially if you find someone I think everybody's so into Peter Attia and Andrew Huberman, and they're great guys. And, there's no question about it. But I think it's so much easier for someone to go this is the way, and this is the only way. So I've been becoming really, really mindful of seeing the nuances and trying to see the bigger picture of there is no just one way. Especially in the biohacking world, I think it can be very kale is evil. It's no, it's not really that evil.
Yeah. I mean, the most extreme diet of 2023 wasn't carnivore. It wasn't plant-based veganism. It was being an omnivore.
So basically just balance.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's the one thing. That's what I always say to a lot of my clients or audiences or whatever, that nobody wants to hear that because it's so unsexy. They just want to go, this is the way, because it's hardcore. And in any way, it has to be this way. If I say it's going back to balance, it's it's okay to have a glass of wine. Everybody's talking about sober curiosity right now. It's we don't have to stop drinking. Just do it sensibly, It's just.
What is one thing the Biostack tribe does not know about you?
Probably that, they know it, but I think a lot of my audience don't know. I'm actually a trained actor. So I did my BA in acting. Went to drama school here in London. And I spent many years running 2 auditions and doing lots of work on the fringe and doing lots of, so there's all kinds of silly video clips of me on the internet, which I probably shouldn't have mentioned. But yeah, that's probably one thing.
Awesome. Well, how would you like to wrap up our show together today?
I would love to spread the message of preventative health. We can all take charge of our health. And it doesn't have to be complicated or expensive. And I know that I'm working for a company that sells supplementations, but again, going back to what we talked about, it's the basic stuff. It's like, it's going outdoors. It's like walking in nature. It's dealing with little traumas and big traumas, not wasting away, basically.
Yeah. And there's no better reminder to that than when you are sick and you lose your health, and whether it's acutely or it's chronically, then when you feel better, that is like the best, strongest reminder you can get that just being well enough to do your daily living responsibilities, to get outside like that, is a huge gift in and of itself.
100%. There's it's freedom.
Well, Maite, thank you for joining me on the podcast today. It's been a pleasure hosting you, chatting about some of these cool ingredients and things you guys are working on, some of your personal interests and your own approach to longevity.
It's been my pleasure, Nick. Nice talking to you, and I hope your audience will get plenty out of this conversation, because I certainly did.
Me too. Thank you.
Bye.
I hope that this has been helpful for you. If you enjoyed it, subscribe and hit the thumbs up. I love knowing who's in the 1% committed to reaching their full potential. Comment 1% below so that I know who you are. For all the resources and links, meet me on my website at mindbodypeak.com. I appreciate you and look forward to connecting with you. As a reminder, the information depicted in this video is for information purposes only. Please consult your primary healthcare professional before making any lifestyle changes.